I'm sure you all know what a field hospital is, do you? Okay. If you watch your radio, you probably would. Well, my name is Emil Martens, and I was drafted in the U.S. Army in March of '41, before Pearl Harbor attack. We traveled by troop train to the Presidio in San Francisco, where we were scheduled to sail to the Philippines on December 8th, the day after Pearl Harbor. Instead, luckily, we set sail for Hawaii, where I stayed a year and a half. That was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me, not going to the Philippines. We stayed at Schofield Barracks in Oahu. My job there was a medic for the 34th Infantry Regiment. Since I was interested in the medics, I managed to transfer to Camp Ellis in Illinois, where many new units were being organized, and got into the 47th Field Hospital, which I much appreciated. After our rigorous training, we left Boston by ship to England. All of our unit was billeted in Starport, England, to English families. The name of my family was Mr. and Mrs. Halderthe, an older couple. The wife cried when I arrived. She didn't want any wild American soldier to come in, which I was not. Eventually, when I left, she cried in sorrow when I was leaving for the ship. So she cried twice. While we were in Starport, we decided to make a dry run of the hospital. Our hospital was put up mostly all by tents, because in Europe there weren't any hospitals around, so we had to make our own tents. Well, anyway, we decided to make a dry run of the hospital, so we set it up in an empty lot and picked up a stray dog and gave the full attention of a patient. We even did a bowel resection on it and kept it well until it was ready to be discharged. We often wondered what the owners of the animal thought of the abdominal scars. But the whole process was very helpful to all of us. We had training to pack ourselves in hospitals in gliders, so we thought the worst was about to happen. But when we got to the pier on shipping out time, things changed, and we went by ship instead. It's very dangerous to go in gliders. 50% casualties. We arrived at Omaha Beach in Normandy 2 weeks later, after waiting in the Southampton Bay for the weather to improve. When we did land, I saw the beach area as far as you could see, both north and south, covered with equipment, boxes and boxes. Our hospital equipment was packed in there somewhere. And because of the time involved in finding our hospital, the hospital personnel were all shifted to an evac hospital nearby. I got the job on a debridement team. You know what debridement is? Everybody? Okay. And I was able to see some terrible wounds suffered by the soldiers. Debridement is when you cut away the dead tissue around a wound by scissors before they go into surgery. You have to get rid of that dead stuff. It's about 3/4 of an inch in depth to have to cut off. Our hospital was assigned to support the 1st, 4th, and 30th Infantry units in their drive from Normandy. In September 1944, it was attached to the 31st Medical Group in support of the 30th Infantry Regiment Division, then in Holland. We moved about quite a bit working 12-hour shifts, and we had crews of men to erect the ward tents, etc. My job was in the sterile supply room with 2 gasoline-driven autoclaves to sterilize everything. Rubber gloves were a premium. More than once, we would have to go into the operating room and pick up the gloves off the floor to clean and sterilize them. Imagine the leaks in those gloves. We were busy every minute of the day and were really tired after 12 hours. We would hear the strange sounds of the V1s because they made that awful noise, raucous noise. You could hear it coming and you could hear it going. And if you heard it stop, that means it was going into a dive. One day we were playing ball out in the field, and we heard one coming, but since we were in Buzz Bomb Alley, we heard this one coming, but we just didn't bother to watch it. And it never stopped, but it glided in and landed and exploded without crash diving right in the field next to us. He could have wiped us all out. And once we had 2 German 88s. You know what a German 88 size cannon is from a tank? We had 2 of them. One landed on one side of the hospital and the other one landed on the other side of the hospital. But fortunately, nobody was hurt because we were on a hillside and the shots caught all the tops of our tents and just made shreds on them. But nobody was hurt. Another time we had a German rocket land about 100 yards away. Rockets, you don't hear them coming because they travel faster than sound. And this blew all the windows out of our living quarters. Of course, we were not operating then. We were just living in a place to live. There's a little town in Germany called Buchenbach, and just outside of this town, we set up our hospital in a large 2-story farmhouse. The next morning, early, a youngster bicycled into our front entrance and said, "I have been shot by a German soldier in my leg." But when the surgeon looked at it, he found that the bullet was only stuck in the leather boot and not penetrated the skin. And at the same time, an American sergeant was setting his truck on fire. And we asked him what he was doing that for. And he replied, "Don't you know that the Germans are just a mile down the road?" That was the start of the Battle of the Bulge. Well, we had no communications going then, so our commanding officer ordered immediate evacuation. In about 5 or 10 minutes, we all piled into what vehicles were available. We had only 2 ambulances and a water truck on which to pile everybody. Our breakfast even was half cooked on the stove. We left it. We left all our belongings, our cameras and toothpaste, everything. We went down the road, and just a half mile down the road, we went through our front lines, which were just setting up there. Luckily, they knew we were Americans, so they would have shot us. Well, we convoyed then to Malmedy, Germany. You've heard of the massacre of Malmedy, which coincidentally was the exact day on which the infamous massacre of Malmedy, which occurred north of town. We learned of the tragedy a couple days later, but we were in Malmedy when the massacre happened, just out close to us. The unit was scattered for a month until we were reunited. The Army supplied us with a new hospital, continuing our interesting and difficult duties throughout the rest of the year. The following are the campaigns I participated in: Hawaii, Normandy, North France, Ardennes, Rhineland, Central Europe, England, France, Belgium, Holland, Czechoslovakia, and Austria. Thank you for sharing my story.